It is my distinct pleasure as Vice President of your organization and our organization to introduce our President, Martha A. Zeiger. So this is the Martha that most of us know, a renowned endocrine surgeon and scientist, professor of surgery, oncology, cellular and molecular medicine, chief of endocrine surgery and leader of NIH-funded molecular biology lab, associate vice chair of surgery faculty development, associate dean of postdoctoral affairs. She has published more than 195 scholarly publications. She is a patent holder, the president of our organization, founder of Endocrine Surgery University, and now she's professor and chair at the University of Virginia. But who is Martha Zeiger really? The story begins in Newton, Massachusetts, west of Boston. This is a super cute picture of Martha at age 3. She was born to Sue and John Zeiger. Sue was a nurse anesthetist at New York Hospital in neurosurgery. John was an absent-minded professor at a business university, Bryant University. That was south of Boston. So you could see where Martha gets her smarts. Martha was the oldest of 3 children. On the left, you could see her doing what she does best. She's taking care of her family. She's sitting with her sister, Catherine, and her brother, Peter. And on the right is a 4-year-old Martha who is super happy, and you can tell already that she has a plan. I'm not sure what that plan is, but she has it. Fast forward to her high school graduation. You can see here Martha is very pensive. She's trying to figure out what she is going to do next. I must admit, Martha, when I saw this picture, I thought that you could be the Susan Day of your time and be part of one of my favorite shows. But no, Martha decided to do more important things. She went to Brown University. She majored in biology, studied classical guitar. She was in the varsity swimming team, and she was also the captain of the varsity tennis team. She was also the keeper of the mascot, which was, I guess, a blue, brown, not sure what that is, but but they were undefeated for 2 years, so that did give them good luck. She then went on to medical school at the University of Vermont, and she played hockey there as a right wing. As you can see, there's a trend here. Martha is definitely a team player and a leader. But in medical school, she decided to do more important things. She met this young man, very handsome young man, John Britton, and they eloped to Oslo, Norway to marry. Martha is then a Navy student, and she's on a scholarship. So John joins the Navy so they can align their lives and live together forever. So ladies and gentlemen, if this is not true love, I don't know what this is. Martha then went on to do a medical internship in San Diego to prepare to be a general medical officer and a Navy lieutenant in Hawaii. At some point, she was taking care of 500 enlisted naval officers. I would imagine that the majority of them were males. So she learned leadership and resourcefulness. On the right-hand side, you could see Martha very proud after performing her first operation, which was the amputation of a Goonie bird. Apparently, this bird did very well as the bird nested real close to where the amputation took place. While in Hawaii, Martha and John became the proud parents of Tanaya and Zach, pictured here with their obligatory Hawaiian head flowers. This is a very young family indeed. Martha then decided to do a general surgery residency at Maine Medical Center, where everybody seemed to be happy, despite the fact that this is before the 80-hour week. So I think that they were resilient residents. She then moved on to complete her service with the Navy and went to the National Naval Medical Center in Bethesda, where she served as Commander Zeiger. You can see her here on the left-hand side on a Nimitz-type destroyer, the Abraham Lincoln. She also, and I think many of us cannot say that we've done this, she served in the surgical team that stood by in case something happened during the inauguration of George H.W. Bush. She tells me that they were very, very nervous and hopefully nothing would happen, and nothing did happen, except that if you notice, Martha does have very curly hair, and in keeping with the 80s. And I think this kind of went away right away when she went to do a surgical oncology fellowship at the NIH under the mentorship of none other than Steve Rosenberg and Jeff Norton. And here's where she got the inspiration to be a great endocrine surgeon and a great scientist. She then went on to Johns Hopkins, where John Cameron hired her, and she spent time in the lab of Michael Levine. And here's where she becomes a preeminent molecular biologist and endocrine surgeon. Pictured here are early mentors and mentees, and also the latest team at Hopkins. One of Martha's greatest legacies at Hopkins is that she established the endocrine surgery fellowship there. Here you can see the 11 fellows that have already graduated in this fellowship, and now this is under the direction of R.T. Mather, who is present in the audience. The other thing that I found out by talking to many of her mentees is that Martha is a terrific mentor. She is a friend, a mentor, advisor, successful mother, wife, mama hen. She has unmatched work ethic, efficiency, and love for science. She is organized. She has calm demeanor. She's a parathyroid whisperer, and always your champion. Once a mentee of Martha Zeiger, you're always her mentee. What would Martha say now? I learned to focus. Her mentorship and sponsorship have been unflagging. She taught me academic efficiency. She inspired me to be a great endocrine surgeon and a great endocrine scientist. She goes out of her way to mentor others and has their best interest in mind. She also abides in Navy time, does things in real time. She stays fit, and she's a mama hen to all her mentees and her endocrine family. The other thing I found out is that Martha likes everything organized and perfect in the operating room, and as I noticed also as serving as her vice president during her time as our president in this organization. So she had a nickname at Hopkins. She was Princess Martha Zeiger. She's her recent coronation. The OR staff crowned her Queen Martha Zeiger, and she's playing that role very well. But ladies and gentlemen, don't be fooled. Martha is no princess or queen. She's a true force. It is said that she operated with acute cholecystitis so as to not interrupt her operating day. And then at the end of the day, she went to the emergency room to get her gallbladder removed. And now Martha is chair of surgery at the University of Virginia. Here you can see her with her new team, and I can't wait to see what she is going to do there. Martha likes to travel, and she likes adventure. Here she is rock climbing, kayaking, whitewater rafting, and aspen skiing. And she also likes, as I said, to travel, and she's traveled to at least 40 countries, if not more. Here's one of my favorite pictures of Martha and John. As you recall, they eloped to Oslo, Norway, to get married 40 years ago. And this is their anniversary in Oslo, Norway. Lastly, Martha loves her family. Here you see her pictured with Tanaya on the left, who works for Bloomberg News in New York, and John, who is a retired cardiac anesthesiologist, and Zach, who is a real estate lawyer. And also their grand doggie Macy, pictured here. So to conclude, Martha is a preeminent endocrine surgeon and scientist. She has mentored and continues to influence many, including me. I recall, she may not recall, my first AAES meeting. Martha took the time to talk to me, made me feel included, which is the essence of this organization. I have always looked up to you, Martha, and I think you're a classy lady and a non-nonsense surgeon. My hashtag looked like a surgeon for me. So you are a true servant leader to this organization. You served your country as Commander Zeiger, and you love your family, not just your immediate family, but all of us in endocrine surgery. So please welcome your Commander-in-Chief, Dr. Martha Zeiger.
Thank you, Carmen. That was wonderful and absolutely fun. And now, the secret's out. I do have a fantasy about being a queen in the operating room. I confess. I'm truly honored and humbled to have served as your president this past year of AAES. And I think it's serendipitous that my secret about wanting to be royalty is out, as today I plan to celebrate my own, yours, our origin, our legacy and lineage, our future, and our successors. But before I formally begin, I must thank two people sitting in the front row who have helped guide me to this special moment in time. My husband, whom you saw, Dr. John Britton, friend, partner, and now consultant. I thank you for all your quiet, behind-the-scenes, unfailing support, and for joining me today for this momentous occasion. And to Becky Sipple, Secretary of AAES, this past year, you and your thoughtful dedication and clear thinking have been a true joy for me. I thank you. I could not have done it without you. So now, let's begin to talk about the magic of endocrine surgery, we all agree, our origins, legacy, and future. We can all agree that endocrine surgery is magical. The definition, a quality that makes something seem removed from everyday life, especially in a way that gives delight. This moment in time, this fleeting moment of this talk, the fleeting passage of this meeting, the impermanence, and yet the amazing impact a moment like this can have on our personal and academic lives. When I think about our profession and our organization, I see our practice, the magnificent operations we performed, the systemic disorders that we write, and the science that we generate as nothing short of magical. Today, I'd like to take this moment to reflect upon some of the magical moments in my own life and career, and some of the magical moments that have shaped our outstanding organization to become what it is today. After all, our relationships help to define us, and our stories remind us of who we are. As a young teenager, I gave my father a Father's Day card that conveyed an insight that at the time I thought was really quite clever, but that I see today as profound. My dad, as you heard, a Navy veteran and the quintessential absent-minded professor, opened the card, and in it, it said, "I am because you are." I felt like I understood existentialism. Little did I know at the time that one day I too would become a naval officer and a professor. But this observation, "I am because you are," carries much deeper wisdom. Yes, I'm a professor, and sometimes I'm absent-minded, and thankfully I have my assistant, Thelma, who'll be thrilled to see her name in lights on Twitter. But now I also see that I am because we are. Along with my parents, other people have inspired me and inspired my interest in this field, and still others have influenced me along the way, and in turn, I have influenced others. So I ask each of you to take a moment to pause and consider this, the continuum of time and relationships that make up each of your lives and careers, that come together in this great profession of ours. Consider how our singular and separate contributions flow into an even greater river of patient care, collegiality, and surgical science that will flow well beyond this moment in time. In today's talk, I want to pay tribute to my own origins and lineage. And some of the names I'll mention may be familiar, but I'll also ask you to recall your own origins and lineage. How were you first attracted to the field? Who influenced you, and whom did you influence? What did you contribute to our great river of endocrine surgery? Next, we'll examine the moments in the history of AAES, along with the founders and leaders who have creatively grown this organization over 40 years. They have guided us through some remarkable points of inflection that have either steadied or changed our course. And we'll reflect upon these so that you can locate each of yourselves in the continuum of this magical discipline. We'll pay tribute and celebrate our accomplishments, but ultimately I hope to inspire our special sense of purpose and to perpetuate the momentum as we embark on the next 40 years. So why have you chosen this amazing career? Built your practice, focused on certain projects, and in essence devoted your entire career to this specialty. Surely you have stories to tell, and allow me to share some of my own. As you heard, my father was a professor and served in the Navy, and my mother was a nurse anesthetist. Thanks to her, at an early age, I was exposed to a laryngoscope, an endotracheal tube, needle and syringes in the medicine closet always, and I was very well behaved because of that. And at the dinner time, she would regale us with amazing neurosurgical stories. I was entranced. Now, when I was a teenager, my mother actually became a surgical patient. In fact, she developed a follicular neoplasm of the thyroid, hard to believe. Uncertain if it was benign or malignant, she had surgery, and it turned out to be benign. But nevertheless, it was very emotional for us. We feared a malignancy, and I remember seeing her in pain. Now, typical of the quintessential surgeon and not being in touch with themselves, it wasn't until recently when I began telling my story that I realized how defining my origins were in my own life and career. Because not only did I become an absent-minded professor, I joined the Navy, I became a surgeon, I married an anesthesiologist, and I devoted my entire career to solving the clinical dilemma associated with the indeterminate thyroid nodule. Amazing. Now, I realize that the details of my life differ from yours, but just as recalling the details of my origin reminds me of my purpose and passion, perhaps recalling your own will do the same. Now, in addition to our real parents, we also experience professional parenting. In our profession, we train and grow by inheriting, participating in, and contributing to a lineage of icons, mentors, and colleagues. I invite you to pause and reflect on your own memories and experiences that brought you into this room right now. Locate yourselves in an unfolding series of your relationships and in the unfolding series and narrative of our field and organization. As I tell my story, I ask you to reflect upon those individuals, those experiences that shaped you into becoming the classic, one would actually describe, OCD type of surgeon, dedicated to understanding complex disease processes, treatment algorithms, embryology, and anatomy. Who first inspired you? Who mentored you? And whom have you mentored and inspired? Well, let's begin with our professional heroines and heroes. Who were they? Do you remember times when they inspired you? A few snapshots of memory stand out for me. As a third-year surgical resident, I attended the Association of Women Surgeons in San Francisco. There I saw the endocrine surgeon from Yale speak, Dr. Barbara Kinder. She was the first woman surgeon I'd ever laid eyes on. Articulate, brilliant, and goddess-like. Now, I knew that it was inappropriate, but I really did want to reach out and touch her. During my chief year as a surgical resident, my mentor, Walter Goldfarb, the endocrine surgeon at Maine Med, brought me to my first AAES meeting. At the time, I was one of only a handful of women endocrine surgeons in the room, and we all sat in a single back row that we privately referred to as the women's ghetto. It was there that I was introduced to Dr. Orlo Clark, the luminary in the field of endocrine surgery. And not surprising to any in this room, Orlo not only remembered my name, but he spoke to me. I was speechless. With these professional heroines and heroes, one I wanted to reach out and touch, one who brought me along, and one who reached out to me, I was forever committed. Now, while these individuals inspire us, our mentors challenge us and guide us. Throughout my career, I've been fortunate to have been mentored by many visionary and inspiring mentors. Who were yours? What specific moments in time do you recall that were influential or dramatic? In my case, I've come to realize that great mentoring occurs not only by design, but also by incredible luck and serendipity. During my fellowship at NIH, I was fortunate to be trained both by Stephen Rosenberg and Jeff Norton, who exposed me to both the rigor and beauty of scientific inquiry. But imagine this scene as an interviewee. A Navy commander, fresh off an aircraft carrier, with virtually no academic background, truly an unusual profile for a candidate. Interviews at one of the most prestigious programs in the country with one of the most brilliant scientists. At the end of the interview, Dr. Rosenberg asked me, and I so wanted to go there, he asked me, what would I do if I weren't accepted? Well, gathering myself together, I replied that I would then pursue a research opportunity at Hopkins, like I knew what I was talking about. Was that the reason he accepted me? I'll never know. But it turned out to be one of the most enriching educational experiences of my career, and he has remained an inspiration to me throughout my entire career. As many of you know in this audience, Jeff Norton was also an uncommonly dedicated mentor to me and many fellows. He fully embodied the role, and before our meetings, he would literally work through the night editing all of our papers in red at the time and deliver them to our desks before we got in the next morning. After fellowship, I was hired by John Cameron, Chief of Surgery at Hopkins, an academic icon and visionary who 20 years ago guided and supported me in the early stages of my career. He introduced me to Michael Levine, and when I met Mike handed me a Nature paper on a pituitary tumor and suggested that I create a transgenic model of a thyroid cancer in mice. Although I was certainly honored that he thought I could do this, I had to ask him how on earth I would do this. And he responded, oh, that's easy, you just clone by phone. And what he meant was you call around the country finding the pieces of DNA that you need to create a transgenic mouse. Well, calling around the country led me to a Japanese postdoctoral fellow who had one of the pieces of DNA, and he was actually 2 floors above us at NIH, Motoyasu Saji, superb scientist. He needed a job. I needed a scientist, and thus the beginning of an incredible partnership with my first team, shown here. And these early, exciting research opportunities were so invigorating and successful, all because my mentor told me to clone by phone. Now, I attribute a large portion of my success in running a laboratory to these influential mentors. And most important for me at the time, it never occurred to any of them that a woman could not be a surgeon scientist. Steve Rosenberg, Jeff Norton, John Cameron, Mike Levine, their examples and influence affirm the essential role of mentoring in our profession. It truly enables us to reach our greatest academic potential. Now, while we learn from our mentors, our colleagues also compliment us and stimulate us to be even better, sometimes in ways that you could not imagine. Who among yours, colleagues, can you count on to make you better than you could be alone? Who gives of themselves to help solve tough problems? In my case, my relationship with Modo and Chris Umbricht, shown here, epitomized the value of partnering, trust, and innovation. As many of you are aware, my passion has always been the molecular diagnostic value of to help solve the indeterminate FNA. And in 1998, my partners and I may have been the first to use a molecular test for the diagnosis of an indeterminate nodule. It's a story you just can't make up. In '97, Moto Yasu and I had begun looking at telomerase to help make this differentiation. We began to collaborate with another lab and a PhD student there named Chris Umbricht. But the following year, Chris ironically developed a follicular neoplasm of the thyroid. The coincidence was incredible, but it presented an unplanned opportunity. Upon his adamant request, we performed PCR on his FNA. It was negative, he underwent surgery, and had a benign process. Only a few years later, Chris joined our lab and replaced Moto Yasu, and a few years after that, another scientist developed a thyroid problem requiring surgery. So the joke became that if you wanted to join our lab, you needed to undergo surgery by me and donate your tumor to our tumor bank. Well, we thought about our heroines and heroes, our mentors and colleagues. Who did you mentor? And have you experienced the joy of seeing yourself in a trainee or witnessing what you have passed on? Just as I remember the moment of truth in my interview with Steve Rosenberg, I remember a moment of truth with my first fellows interview. When I met with Imad Kandil, I naively, and some would say stupidly, asked him what he would bring to Hopkins as a fellow. Nobody should ask that question of a resident. He kindly humored me, paused and thought about the question. He seemed to draw a blank, but suddenly he threw up his arms and he said, "To Hopkins, absolutely nothing." And in that moment in time, that refreshing honesty and good humor, I knew then that he was the one. Now, before meeting Imad, I'd learned to spot talent in other trainees. As a first-year faculty member at Hopkins, where Rob Udelsman was chief of endocrine surgery, I met a senior resident named Herb Chen. And I had the distinct and extremely easy task of mentoring Herb through a project of ours where he presented at the American College of Surgeons. Several years later, when he invited me as a visiting professor at Wisconsin, I had the distinct pleasure of hearing my own advice repeated back verbatim by his own fellow, Huggy Mazet. He told me how Herb had taught him to present at national meetings using transition words between slides and how to make an oral presentation just flow. This evening, I'll be delighted to see Herb take the reins of AAES, and I cannot imagine a more fitting occasion. Our greatest joy as mentor is to witness the growth, independence, and successes of our mentees, the passing on of wisdom, experience, and advice, and knowing that even a small part of what you taught will live on. We are all part of a greater continuum. Each of us has our own lineage that stretches from our own inspirations to inspiring the next generation. Each imparts an element of themselves onto the next, whether it be a work style, a special move in the operating room, a way of thinking, or a philosophy of life. I hope that by listening to me recount my stories helps you recount your own and reminds you of how important these relationships are for the future success of our organization. And what of it? Its origins, its legacy, and its future. Where do you fit into its trajectory, and what will you do to help propel it ahead? From a single back row of women surgeons to now women presidents, AAES has come a long way. Let's now consider the leaders who have been our catalysts and what they have done to deliver us to this new day, a mature, sophisticated organization. Similar to our own endocrine surgery lives, the history of AAES is storied, nuanced, and a delight to reflect upon. The late Norm Thompson cataloged our beginning, and I quote, "By 1980, a critical mass of information had been reached, whereby the average general surgeon could no longer stay up. At the IAES, the seed for AAES was planted during a spontaneous luncheon. Those present proposed an annual American society. They included Orlo Clark, Tony Edis, Ed Kaplan, Jack Monchick, and Norm, shown here with the mic. The first meeting was held in Ann Arbor in 1980, and the 2 days of scientific meetings were exceptional and loud. And the 96 in attendance were in unanimous agreement to formalize an organization initially called American Endocrine Surgical Society. Thus, our spontaneous, energy-charged beginnings. Well, what has transpired since that momentous day? As you listen to these next stories about our achievements as a society, consider how you intend to build upon these milestones. How will you be innovative and visionary, and would you break the rules? Would you be willing to take risks? Could you function as a computer program? Demand inclusion? Volunteer your time? Donate your own money? And could you deal with the government? Well, many of those who went before you have done so in spades. Our field advanced when George Irvin was willing to take a risk to set a new standard of care, namely the Miami criteria. Spurned by an operative failure, he sought better innovative evidence for cure for hyperparathyroidism. He was on a mission, and nothing, not even U.S. laws, could stop him. In order to enlist enough patients for a study, he would load a PTH cart into his station wagon and drive across Biscayne Bay from lab to OR. Now, moving radioisotopes without a license was strictly against the law, specifically Atomic Energy Commission. But George believed it was much more important to have a PTH assay near the surgeon than to be inhibited by some U.S. law. Now, I don't condone breaking federal laws, but ask yourself, how far would you be willing to go to improve the care of our patients? Do you know how the endocrine surgery match began? In the beginning, we had Allan Siperstein, and in the early days, he was our human computer match program. The first match occurred in 2006. 10 programs and applicants emailed Allan their lists. Letter and number assignments were made and recorded on cards. There was one deck for the applicants and one deck for the programs. And like a game of solitaire, Allan matched programs and applicants on his kitchen table for 7 years. Imagine your fates today being decided in a card game. Allan served our profession by facilitating our talent pipeline. Our hats and admiration are off to you, Allan. Thank you. Now, how do we maximize the contributions of all to our field? In AAES, we believe it's better to be inclusive of a variety of specialties as we work side by side with them in our daily lives. We must acknowledge the magnificent contribution of AAES President Geoffrey Thompson. He recognized that there are many surgeons from other disciplines, head and neck surgeons, neurosurgeons, etc., who make significant contributions to the surgical care of our patients. In his own words, when president, he said, "If Harvey Cushing were alive today, he would have been ineligible for a voting membership in the AAES." And thus the welcoming of allied specialists as voting members. The move underscores the fundamental principle that we grow in all our missions when we include the broader perspective and experience. Just as we've learned to partner with our colleagues, AAES has moved to inviting and including patients. After all, the best care for our patients is our raison d'etre. As president in 2009, Janice Pasieka enlisted the help of council members to create the first patient education website, officially launched only 1 year later under her persistent and strong guidance. Now, thanks to Barb Miller and IT Committee, we are also on social media, where our members can advertise our latest accomplishments, presentations, papers, and opinions. So how can AAES continue to engage patients? Might you have something special? And are there even more effective ways we have yet to try or imagine? In addition to sharing our knowledge with patients, how do we pass on the wisdom of endocrine surgeons with decades of experience to our trainees? As a board member of AACE, I learned about Endocrine University for endocrinology fellows. Sitting at a board meeting for 2 days straight with a bunch of endocrinologists, I had a lot of time to think about this. And I got this idea to recapitulate a cutting-edge course for our trainees. And with the help of leadership, we created and grew an educational legacy for our fellows. At the time, I had no concept of it being an incredible network experience for people or a venue for galvanizing our fellows. You can feel the energy every year. And just this year, we've recapitulated its unique learning concepts for our more experienced surgeons. And so many of us feel the proud parent of ESU, now most recently under the superb stewardship of Mira Milas. Thank you. Could you translate the idea of a comprehensive database for all of us to use into a national computer program, a company, and get approval from a major government organization, namely CMS? Well, this group, led by Barry and Nobnit, did. At its inception at an ATA meeting, Barry and Nobnit, Julianne Sosa, and Nancy Perrier envisioned C-squip on a napkin. The C stands for collaboration. This effort took a lot of collaboration and initiative and grit. It required incredible teamwork by this group, later enlisting Paul Gauger and President Miguel Herrera, fundraising, a self-funded retreat, and buy-in from our organization. CSQIP is now approved by CMS and soon to become a robust platform upon which all of us will study. It's a remarkable feat, a story of a dream drawn up on a napkin by 3 people who brought this resource through challenging terrain. Thank you, and wow. What entrepreneurial ventures might this example inspire in the future? What exciting ideas are awaiting for you to draw up on your napkin? A great professional society isn't only about creating new things. It's also about making concrete and authoritative the best practices in a discipline. Begun as a presidential initiative, Sally Carty led a group of 16 authors to write the parathyroid guidelines, and now leads a group of 19 authors writing the thyroid guidelines. Having been involved myself in writing guidelines during the early stages, I can attest firsthand to the inordinate amount of time, patience, and energy an undertaking like this requires. Imagine consensus building among 19 brilliant, compulsive, highly energetic endocrinologists, surgeons, and related specialties around content, style, rules of engagement, and wordsmithing. I'm not ashamed to say that I needed a friend often to talk me off the ledge when I led guidelines committees. Sally and team, we so admire your perseverance, your dedication, and collaborative spirit. Thank you. Finally, the year 2019 will mark our 40th year as a society. From a membership of 96 to 5 times that and growing. We have grown from a meeting with only a plenary session to now many parallel sessions and a myriad of educational offerings. 2 years ago, Becky Sipple and Peter Angelos held our first strategic planning meeting, formalizing our mission, vision, strategic initiatives, and goals. Admittedly, all concepts we surgeons struggle to understand. We've recently revisited these plans and marked our progress this past winter, and will continue to do so annually. The exercise is a means of and a sign of maturing. With it, we can move in one direction with clear, shared priorities, goals, tactics outlined and followed. We have evolved from a high-energy, enthusiastic group guided by singular presidential initiatives to now one in which many have a voice and can participate in agreed-upon direction. And we are becoming more and more sophisticated, guided by an expert management company, such that our discipline can realize even more and have a greater, broader impact. Most importantly, we are heading together in one direction with unstoppable force. In closing, I ask each of you to reflect upon our incredible, magical organization, its rich history and evolution, and consider what has gone before you to bring us to this new day of a professional society with strategic planning, formal organization, and reporting structure. Imagine the possibilities for where we are headed and what your contribution might be. I have asked each of you to reflect upon your personal and academic journey that brought you here today, those who have influenced you and guided you, and those in turn whom you have influenced and guided. In my case, it started with my mother with a suspicious thyroid nodule. In your case, who influenced you? What situation did you experience? During your training, who challenged you, and who in turn did you mentor, push, as that is your legacy? I have reviewed a myriad of successes in the history of AAES, attempted to catalog many of them for you, only to highlight the energy, dedication, and serendipity that have guided us to where we are today. I ask that you look around the room to those beside you, the innovators, the passionate, and the driven ones, are those who have implemented change and who have brought us to where we are today. At this moment in time, I ask each of you what you can bring to this magical organization, how you are networked within our membership, and what our vision should be together in the future. This moment in time is forever emblazoned in my heart and soul, and in turn, I hope even one small vignette, word, inspiration is emblazoned in yours. I sincerely thank you for the trust you have put in me to lead this organization and for the honor you have bestowed upon me today. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha, for that wonderful presentation, and thank you so much for your service, not only to our field, but to our organization. One of the pleasures of being the secretary is the honor to work with these truly amazing individuals who lead our organization, and it has been a true pleasure to work with you over the course of the last year, and I feel that you have taken our organization in such a positive direction, and the future of our organization is much brighter because of your involvement. We want to give you a plaque to honor you to commemorate your year here.
Thank you.
And then, because this is such a special event for you, we want to give you something to sort of commemorate this, to bring home to your office. And the AAES officers thought about this, and we know that you are such a world traveler. And so we thought, what would be a perfect gift for the world traveler but a map of the world that is gold foil that you can scratch off every country of the world that she's visited. And based on where Martha has traveled, this is going to be a very colorful map very quickly. And for those of you who know Martha, I think the greatest thing I probably learned with Martha is her military efficiency. I have never been held accountable to stay on time, and I knew I never was going to be 1 minute late to any call, ever, because she would make me aware of it. So she runs everything with military efficiency, and I think that has been a blessing for all of us over the last year to learn. And so because of that, we have asked, at our command, we've gotten her a hat, the USS Endocrine for AAES 2018 by President Zeiger.
Great. Thank you. I also have something for you for your dog, Macy, and it's a Goonie bird without a leg.
Thank you so much. This has been wonderful. Thank you.